Hi there, my name is Ewan Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Remembering Love. If you're new to this channel, this is a channel where we explore themes of healing childhood trauma, C-PTSD, life, love, and all the various things in between. So welcome if it's your first time here. If you're interested in videos about healing childhood trauma, life, etc., I put out videos every week, so please like and subscribe to make sure you get updated with that. Now, the subject of today's video, it's a bit of an interesting one, we're going off left field a little bit, is the relationship between reading the mystics and healing childhood trauma. And you're probably wondering, what does mysticism and mystics got to do with healing CPTSD and childhood trauma? And I'm about to share with you what that is and why that is, and it's really my own personal experience. Like, this has helped me, and I think this could also help you if you're open and interested in something like that. Now, to do that, we're going to cover a few different things. First of all, I'm going to give a very brief definition of what are mystics and what is mysticism and what is this all about. And then we're going to look at why mysticism and the writings of mystics has relevance to our healing journey of childhood trauma and healing CPTSD, and what are the practical applications of these writings in our own healing process. And I'd also like to look at why, for me, the reading of mystics and reading Western psychology and working on the the practicalities of my trauma and understanding it complement each other very well, where they both bookend this wider story. And I'm going to give you details as to why I think that is important and why it's really mattered for me. And right at the end, if you stay to the end, I'm going to share with you an amazing resource that if you're curious and you like to dip your toe in really getting a sense of what mystical writings are all about, I'm going to point you in the right direction and show you a great place to start with that. So let's get started. What is a mystic? What is mysticism? And I'm going to give you the abridged, narrowed down version of this, because there are tombs and tombs of writings written about this, so I'm going to give you a very, very basic definition. So the way to understand mysticism and the mystical experience is it's a person that has a direct experience with the divine or the transcendent. And in each religious tradition, whether it's the Tao, ground of luminosity, nirvana, Buddhahood, God, Allah, presence, great spirit, these are all different terms and different names for the same fundamental phenomena of an experience of something transcendent. So we'll just use this word transcendent. It's going to cover all the cultural and religious differences. And rather than believing in God in the sense of I go to church and I'm told these things, or I go to the mosque or I go to the temple and I'm told this is what God is and this is what he or she does and I believe it and I pray, the mystic is someone that has a direct experience where they have an experience of what God is, what God means directly. So it's rather than reading about wine, this is someone who drinks the wine and knows experientially what that is. And mysticism is the study or the understanding of that direct experience. So when I talk about mystics, I'm talking about people that have written and experienced that transcendence. And most often or not, their lives are radically transformed by that experience in terms of the way they live their life and the way they conduct their life. And sometimes that has come spontaneously. Sometimes it comes from practices and processes. Sometimes it's come in visions. Sometimes it comes in songs. So, for every person it's going to be a little bit different. But the core experience appears to be the same, which is this direct contact with the divine. Now, there are mystics in all traditions, saints, prophets, teachers, masters, etc. Today I'm going to be drawing on the traditions of Islam and Christianity. And although you can look at Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Taoism, they've also got their masters and mystics as well. But just for the sake of narrowing things down and just keeping things simple, I'm going to be drawing from the mystics of the Christian and Islamic tradition. I myself, just as a small note, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a Buddhist, although I have, as you can see, I have a lot of religious iconography around me. I value religious insight. I definitely don't want to say I'm spiritual but not religious, because I do feel like I do have a religiousness in me, which to me is that understanding of the core message of what all religions share. So I guess it's a love of gnosis or a love of knowledge or understanding of these core teachings that I have, and this is why I like religious iconography. I like the messages and feelings it communicates without being affiliated with one particular religion. So And let's have a look at why it's relevant to healing childhood trauma, like how someone 500 years ago writing about their experience with God got any relevance to me in this journey of healing my childhood trauma. Now, the first thing is when you start reading mysticism, you see they have a very detailed understanding of suffering. So there is no spiritual bypass, there is no law of attraction, there are no 10 ways to kind of, attract what you want in your life. It is very grounded in the human experience of suffering. Now, some of that comes from just the reality of living 500 years ago, 800 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Times were tough. The life people lived then was probably incomprehensible for us in terms of death and destruction and war and pestilence, etc. So they had direct experience of life suffering. And in the midst of that suffering, they were able to have these experiences of divine love, of transcendence. So the first thing is they get it. They get that suffering is part of this human experience. So if you read Ibn Arabi in his book Journey to the Lord of Power, this is what he has to say about suffering. Every rational person must know that the journey is based on toil and the hardships of life, on afflictions and tests and the acceptance of dangers and very great terrors. It is not possible for the traveller to find in this journey unimpaired comfort, security or bliss. So what you see here, Ibn Arabi, the famous Sufi mystic from Andalusia, where I live here, is articulating this sense of there's just no getting around it. That the reality is if you're on this journey, you're on this process of living this life, you are going to suffer. And if you try maneuver things in a way where you just have bliss and happiness all the time, you're going to have a problem. So there's this basic sense of we are going to suffer. It's part of this condition. Don't fight it. Don't deny it. Be with it. And the question then becomes within mysticism is, what is the point of this suffering? Is it just random? And obviously they don't think it is. That they think suffering in of itself is an opportunity for transformation. And the meaning we give our suffering, the purpose of our suffering is what counts rather than the suffering itself. Because as far as they're concerned, suffering is just part of the deal. It's like we just sign up to it being in this earth. What we make of that suffering, how we understand that suffering is what counts. So let's have a look at how Rumi understands that. No important worldly task can be accomplished without pain. So how could the supreme task not be hard to bring to completion? You have to suffer one way or the other. There is no way out. At least devote your suffering to finding that door of adoration, which is the only way out. You're going to die anyway. Why not die while you are alive? Into the life that will never die. Into the love that is eternal life. What we see Rumi articulating is we're going to suffer. We may as well make that suffering in service of something greater than just the suffering itself. That we don't look just to get to the other side of suffering to pleasure and happiness, but we look at using that suffering as source material from which to get closer to God or closer to divine, because it's there anyway, so we may as well use it for this purpose. And that for me, in terms of giving my suffering a context, allowing myself the means and mechanisms to understand my suffering from a wider context helps me a lot, because it takes the randomness out, it takes the unfairness out, it takes the feeling that this is all just pointless and it just sucks and too bad kind of thing, and allows me to look at my suffering from a different lens, not deny it, not suppress it, but to own it, to be present with it and use it as this source material from which I can get closer to my own divinity. So that is relevant for anyone on this journey of healing childhood trauma. So that's the one thing that I think I've taken a lot from, is their acknowledgement of suffering and their understanding of suffering. The second thing is how does this work in conjunction with Western psychology? Now, if you look at all my books here, I showed you all my books, they're really broken up into three areas. I've got a lot of books on politics and things to do with social studies. But the other two categories I mainly read on and buy books on is mysticism, the thing we're talking about today, and Western psychology. So I have a lot of books on trauma, healing CPTSD, understanding trauma somatically, how it affects my nervous system, the psychology of dealing with shame, abuse, etc., etc. And I have these two kind of these two areas of study on one level that seem sort of different and separate, but to me they complement each other really well. Because one of the limits of Western psychology that I find, just on a personal level, is on a mechanics, it's very good. Like it can deconstruct, like what happened in my childhood, how, shame got transferred from this person to me, and how I have this kind of trauma in my body, and what I kind of need to do to kind of absolve myself of that, or transcend that, or get past toxic shame and self-destruction and addiction. And it's very good at that. There's a lot of research. It's very much based on science and research, and there's all these new studies coming out. And I've kind of lapped that up. I see a therapist. I use the model in Western psychology to improve and help heal my childhood trauma. But it's a model that has its limits in the sense of, psychology is looking to be a legitimate science. It works within a scientific framework, and it's very much about, you as this person, this is how we break you apart, this is how we put you back together. But it doesn't really offer any wider context philosophically or theologically about what is that wider context my trauma has occurred within, in terms of the universe, in terms of the cosmos, in terms of this world. What is the metaphysical understanding of that? Now I get it. It's not their job to sort of prescribe that or talk about that. They'll say, well, hand that over to religion, hand that over to philosophy. We're just here to work on that. I get that. But if that, for me, it's limited, because the story and the wider narrative that my trauma occurs in does matter. It matters a lot. Because I don't just live in this small little lane, that my trauma does occur within a wider context. And what you read in mysticism is how they define that context, how they share about that context. And the context that they prescribe, that they share about, that they articulate, is a powerful context. And the context they prescribe is one of magic, mystery, love, mercy, compassion, sentience, pantheism, animism, just a world that is rich with joy and love. And when I take that in, when I feel the truth of that, it gives more meaning to my healing journey. That I am not just a survivor of childhood trauma looking to heal these various kind of psychological wounds and get to a life where I'm just kind of functioning on a normal level. Rather, I am a being living in this divine universe that's looking at getting a deeper and deeper connection with that divinity, so I can love more deeply and ultimately relax and ultimately feel that I can come home to my own knowing of that divinity. So I still have to do the work on my shame. I still have to kind of do my TRE and safe and sound protocol and all the practicalities of my healing process. But there is a wider, more powerful context that the mystics articulate, that we do not live in a materialistic, meaningless, random universe, but rather we live in a universe of meaning infused with love. So in this vision of a meaningful, loving universe, there are three things that the mystics articulate. They articulate that we live in a universe that is created by love, for love, with love. That God is a loving presence at heart. So if you read Marguerite Porte, who was actually burned at the cross for her writings, this is what she has to say about the relationship between love and God. I am God, says love, for love is God, and God is love. And this soul is God by the condition of love. I am God by divine nature, and this soul is God by the condition of love. So what you see here is a creation story, an understanding of the relationship between the divine and love, that there is no separation, and that love is God and God is that love, and that love is in everything and everyone, and most importantly it's in ourselves. So they articulate a vision of the universe and the world that is consecrated and founded in love. If you read Catherine of Siena, listen how she describes the nature of this world. All has been consecrated. The creatures in the forest know this. The earth does. The seas do. The clouds know, as does the heart full of love. Everything comes from love. All is ordained for the salvation of life. God does nothing without this goal in mind. So the centrality of love in the nature and the fabric of existence is there in the writings. The second thing that's articulated over and over and over is that loving and divine presence is not external to us. It's not, sitting on a cloud somewhere or in some other dimension. That loving presence and that divine presence is within us. And this is why some of these writings were such heresy, because to prescribe that, to say that relationship with God is something internal rather than external, takes away the middleman. So you see through a lot of the writings that understanding of the presence of God and the proximity of God is closer to us than we are to ourselves. That Catherine of Siena said that God is closer to us than a fish is to water. Ibn Arabi said God is closer to us than our own breath. Julian Norwich said God is closer to us than ourselves, than us, our own soul. So this proximity of divinity and its intimacy to who we are and what we are comes through in these writings. So if you hear what Julian of Norwich has to say about where God dwells. Greatly we ought to rejoice that God dwells in our soul, and more greatly we ought to rejoice that our soul dwells in God. Our soul is created to be God's dwelling place, and the dwelling place of our soul is God, who is uncreated. So what you see is articulated there is a sense of the core of who we are is in God, and the core of who God is in us, that they're one and the same thing, that they're not separate. And that is a profound understanding, to look at my childhood trauma and to look at my healing process and to see deep within me is a divinity and power and love that can't be separated from me. No matter what trauma I've been through, no matter what I've gone through, that is unextinguishable. That can't be taken away. It's the core of who I am. And that for me is profound. It's reassuring, it's comforting, it's clear. It's a clear understanding that at the heart of who I am, at the heart and central to my identity is God's love, and I am central to God's identity. And there is this connection between the two that is just really powerful, and it's articulated in these writings. And the third thing that is articulated in these mystical writings is the path forward in life is love. So you see that God is love, that love dwells inside of us, and our lives are about loving, that everything is created from love, everything is about love. And they're not talking about, romantic love here or the love of fish and chips. They're talking about this deep, abiding, selfless love, this care, concern and compassion for everything and everyone, that thing that wells up in our heart when we see people suffering, that love we have of just wanting the world to be a better place, that deep wellspring we all possess, that love of people and this earth and humanity and ultimately ourselves. And our purpose in this life is to love. There is nothing more and nothing less. And they boil it down to just such simple things. If you read Teresa of Avila, this is what she has to say about the importance of love. It is love alone that gives worth to all things. Our life is grounded and rooted in love. And without love, we may not live. So I read that and I find it inspiring. I find it inspiring for my journey. It's a compass or a North Star to keep me on track. And so I do all the things I need to do to help heal my childhood trauma, but I do it in a context where I know that this is a world created by love, that love exists within inside me, and my purpose in this world is to give more of that love, to come from more of that love. And it isn't just all kind of ethereal things. The mystics also provide their own advice and insights on how we take those insights and how we embody them more fully in our lives. There's a lot of focus on silence and developing silence and practicing silence, and our relationship to God is often found in silence. That's written a lot about. There's a focus on service and giving and thinking of others, and that's all connected then to the dissolving of ego. In Christianity, it's termed poverty, to find poverty which isn't, you know, a literal sense of just being poor, although some had that, but also to be poor of spirit, you know, to be poor of ego, to be poor of self-will. In Sufism, they talk about the word fana, which is the annihilation of the ego, the dissolving of the ego. So you see this understanding of, through cultivating silence, through being of service to others, and dissolving our selfishness and our ego, all of this brings us closer to the proximity of divine love, of transcendence. So to me, what it gives me is a feeling that this work I'm doing on myself psychologically with my trauma is part of a wider, more magical and mysterious story, that I don't just heal my childhood trauma to get a little less dysfunctional. I heal my childhood trauma to get closer to that divine love, to embody and to feel more deeply that divine love. And when I do that and I feel that, it just, I just get a lot of joy from it. And I read Teresa of Avila, Julian of Norwich, Ibn Arabi, and I can't explain it, but it just feels kind of right. I read what they write about and it just feels true to me. And it also validates my own experience, my own heart, my own moments that I've had in silence and my own meditation, my own prayer, where I feel the truth of what they're saying through my own experience of the divine, of the transcendent. And it's, I feel like this journey I'm on without that would feel empty. It would feel, I don't know, kind of pointless on one level. So for me, it's the two processes really complement each other really well. The practicalities of Western psychology and the inspiration and vision of the mystics, in the sense of this is what it's all about. This is, you know, you might say Western psychology gives us some of the practicalities, and the mystics give us a wider vision of what that's occurring within. And also tools to kind of get there, and tools to understand our suffering and our pain as well. So it's not just all sort of out there experience. You know, if you get into the nitty-gritty of what they write, there's roadmaps. And it's something worth understanding that Western psychology has had maybe 100 years or so of a study of the human mind and suffering. But these mystical traditions, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, Hinduism, you're talking about hundreds and thousands of years of delving into the questions of what is mind, what is suffering, why are we here, human psychology. That is a really rich tradition to draw from, and it has a lot of depth, a lot of depth that I get a lot of benefit from. So lastly, I'd like to share with you just a really great resource. There's a YouTube channel that I'm going to put links below in the description by a Buddhist nun in Australia, and she puts out videos pretty much twice a week of mystical writings that she recites with kind of background music in a very kind of meditative, contemplative way. From all traditions, Sufism, Christianity, Dzogchen, Zen, Hinduism, just everything you could think of. And she just does it in a brilliant way. And you've kind of got 10-minute versions, an hour and a half, you've got meditations. So I'm going to put a link in the description of some of my top favorites that I listen to on a regular basis, as well as links to the channel. So if you're wanting to get a sense of, you know, if you're not really into kind of just going buying a book on Teresa of Avila, and you want to just get a feel of how does this resonate with you, hearing what the mystics have to say, how does it sit with you, go to this channel. You know, listen to some of the videos, depending on what you're drawn to, just intuitively what you feel, and let it in. You know, and the way she reads it and the background music to it allows for that. It allows this sense of just you lie back and there's enough pauses and background music just to kind of let the words and feeling soak in. And I listen to this channel every week. You know, she puts out new things. Some I listen to more than others. Some I repeat over and over. The Gabor and the Hazif, and particularly the Sufi playlist, I love a lot. And the Christian Mystics playlist, I listen to a lot. So look, I hope this has made sense. If you would like, I hope this has made sense. I hope this has helped you. I hope you found this interesting. If you had an experience of the relationship between mysticism and your own healing journey, please write something in the comments. I would really appreciate that. Again, if you've enjoyed this, like and subscribe. I put out videos every week pretty much. And look, please take care of yourself. Good luck and take care. Bye-bye.